Every single day, your body pumps out over a liter of this thick, sticky fluid. It's your relentless first line of defense. And honestly, the change in its color, it's basically a visual logbook of the microscopic battlefield raging inside your respiratory tract. 1. Clear mucus. Under optimal conditions, your body is a non-stop factory for clear mucus. Think of it as an evolutionary masterpiece made of water, proteins, antibodies, and dissolved salts. The main ingredient here is a protein called mucin. These act like tiny, dry sponges. The second they touch water, they swell up to hundreds of times their size, creating that sticky, gel-like texture. Picture this clear mucus as giant strips of flypaper lining your entire airway. Every time you take a breath, you aren't just inhaling oxygen, you're pulling in millions of dust particles, pollen, bacteria, and viruses. Clear mucus is there to trap all these trespassers before they can even get close to your lungs. Hidden inside this mucus are cilia, microscopic hairs moving in rhythm like millions of tiny brooms. They sweep the dirty mucus down your throat to be swallowed and destroyed by your stomach acid, all without you even noticing. In fact, clear mucus also packs antibodies, specifically immunoglobulin A. They act like bouncers at a nightclub door, instantly grabbing onto viruses and shutting them down. Now, when you get allergies, say from inhaling pollen or cat dander, your immune system mistakenly flags these harmless particles as deadly threats. Your body responds by pumping out histamine. This triggers your glands to mass produce this clear fluid, but way more of it, and much runnier. Why? To literally flush out your nasal passages as fast as humanly possible, giving you that classic runny nose. It's purely a hydraulic response, an emergency rinse cycle before the enemy can settle in. 2. White mucus. Here's the thing. When that clear liquid turns cloudy white, it's a signal that the fluid dynamics inside your nose have drastically changed. It usually points to nasal congestion or the very early stages of a cold. When a virus actually breaches that first defense and starts infecting the cells lining your nose, your immune system sounds the first alarm. The immediate response? Inflammation. The capillaries in your nose rapidly dilate to rush in immune cells. This causes your nasal tissues to physically swell up, dramatically narrowing your airways. Imagine a massive 6-lane highway suddenly bottlenecking into a single lane. Traffic grinds to an absolute halt. The same goes for your mucus. Because the passage is so tight, the mucus can't flow properly. As it gets trapped and just sits there in your nasal cavity, it starts losing moisture. The water slowly evaporates, leaving behind a much denser concentration of those mucin proteins. Optically speaking, as this protein density goes up and the fluid goes down, the mucus loses its transparency. Instead of letting light pass through smoothly, it scatters the light, which our eyes perceive as cloudy white. This isn't necessarily a sign that your infection has gotten drastically worse. It's just simple physics proving that your defensive fluids are locally dehydrated thanks to a microscopic traffic jam. 3. Yellow mucus. Now, if you start seeing bright yellow or golden mucus, that's visual confirmation that your immune system's infantry has arrived at the front lines, and a bloody battle is officially underway. These foot soldiers are a type of white blood cell called neutrophils. They are highly aggressive, microscopic kamikaze warriors. When neutrophils detect a cell that's been hijacked by a virus or bacteria, they swarm the area and start swallowing the pathogens whole, a process called phagocytosis. But their real secret weapon is dropping chemical bombs to obliterate the enemies they've swallowed. These chemical bombs rely on a specific enzyme called myeloperoxidase, or MPO. And this enzyme is the secret behind the color change. You see, MPO contains iron atoms within its molecular structure. After a neutrophil successfully kills a pathogen, it dies and falls apart, leaving behind cellular wreckage. Millions of these dead white blood cells pile up in your mucus. The iron inside those leftover MPO enzymes starts to oxidize. Chemically, oxidizing iron creates a yellow pigment. The deeper the yellow, the more of your white blood cells have fallen on the nasal battlefield. Yellow mucus is essentially biological rust and a microscopic mass grave that your body is actively clearing out. 4. Green mucus. If yellow means a battle, then green is the aftermath of a massive, days-long slaughter. Mucus turns thick green when the concentration of dead white blood cells, that MPO enzyme, and other cellular debris hits a saturation point. It means your immune system is mounting an incredibly massive inflammatory response. There's a very common medical misconception out there that green mucus automatically means you have a bacterial infection and need a prescription for antibiotics. The scientific reality isn't that simple. The rhinovirus or influenza that causes the common cold can also trigger such a brutal immune response that it produces thick green mucus. Your body doesn't color code based on the type of pathogen. The color is purely driven by the sheer volume of dead immune troops. Telling whether this green sludge is viral or bacterial really comes down to time and accompanying symptoms. If this green mucus shows up on day 3 or 4 and slowly starts improving, it's just the natural life cycle of a viral infection. However, if this thick green mucus hangs around for over 10 days straight without letting up, especially if it's paired with extreme facial pressure or a high fever, then there's a real chance a bacterial colony has taken over your vulnerable sinus cavities. That creates a secondary infection that might actually need medical intervention. But overall, green mucus is simply a sign that your body is working overtime to clean up a biological disaster zone. 5. Brown mucus. Moving into brown territory, we start shifting away from immune byproducts to physical clues about what you're inhaling or what's been damaged inside your airway. Brown mucus generally tells one of 2 stories. The first story is an overloaded air filter. Your nose is a high-performance particulate filter. If you spend time in a super dusty environment, a construction zone, or you're stuck in traffic with extreme air pollution, microscopic dirt particles get trapped in that sticky mucus web. When external grime mixes with your protective mucus, it blends into a thick brown sludge. The second and honestly more common story is old blood. Your nasal cavity is lined with a network of incredibly fragile capillaries sitting right near the surface. If your nose dries out from cold air or if you blow your nose way too hard over and over, these tiny blood vessels can pop. A little bit of fresh blood leaks into the mucus. When that blood doesn't get cleared out immediately and sits in your nose for a few hours or days, the hemoglobin in your red blood cells react with the oxygen in the air. This oxidation process turns bright red blood into a dark, rusty brown. So brown mucus mostly means you've either been breathing in a filthy environment or your nose is healing from the micro tears of aggressive nose blowing. 6. Gray or black mucus. Dark gray or pitch black mucus is an anomaly you need to take seriously because it tells a story of extreme external invasion or, quite frankly, a true medical horror story. The most common non-life-threatening cause of black mucus comes down to lifestyle or chronic environmental exposure. Heavy smokers often find their mucus turning dark gray or black because the toxic tar and resins from hundreds of lit cigarettes are literally dyeing the protective secretions of their lungs and nose. The same thing happens to coal miners or people who have survived a building fire, where massive amounts of ash and carbon are inhaled. Your nose is just trying its hardest to evacuate the soot. But here's the thing. If you're not a smoker, you haven't been in a heavily polluted area, and you suddenly start blowing out thick black mucus, this is a biological red flag of the highest order. Black mucus can be a primary sign of an acute invasive fungal infection, like mucormycosis or aspergillosis. Fungal spores are always floating in the air around us, but a healthy immune system crushes them instantly. However, in individuals with highly compromised immune systems, like chemotherapy patients or those with uncontrolled diabetes, these spores manage to latch on, germinate, and start eating the living tissue inside the nose and sinuses. The fungus destroys the blood vessels, causing the flesh inside your nose to rot and die, a process called necrosis. This dead, rotting tissue turns black, and it's the shedding of this necrotic material that turns the mucus pitch black. In this case, black isn't just a sign of a cold. It's an emergency siren that the tissues inside your head are suffering structural damage that requires immediate surgical and antifungal intervention. Your mucus never lies. It is the silent witness to every molecule, pathogen, and battle that takes place with every single breath you take.